So I'm gonna need you guys to strap up your little booties, lace them tight, and get prepared because we got some drama to talk about today. It's an unfortunate situation between two creators called GeorgeNotFound and Katiebugs. I'm not familiar with either of them, so I'm going into this completely unbiased. And the way that I'm gonna approach this video is we're gonna watch hers first, where she talks about the things that happened. Then we're gonna watch George's response. And every so often, I'm gonna chime in on George's response and I'm gonna talk about what I thought in that moment because I took notes. I didn't summarize anything. I'm just gonna give you guys the way that I thought about this situation piece by piece as we go through it. And then since then, she's actually responded on Twitter with some statements, which I grabbed a few of those, and then I'm gonna give you guys my notes and thoughts on that when we get there. So don't think that I'm leaning one way or the other, because again, this is me just giving you what I thought in that moment based on how much I had watched and what information I had. So it does change a little bit as things go, and then I'm curious to see what you guys think at the end, but let's dive in.
Last year, at the beginning of summer, I was assaulted by a significantly older and popular content creator. I was freshly 18 and had just graduated high school a few weeks prior. I was drunk in a hotel room with other people around me when it happened. He was someone I had once watched, and he was 8 years older than me and far more powerful. The full story is quite short. It was at a convention in a hotel room. It was my first convention I was invited to, so I stuck by one of my best friends the entire time. I was nervous but excited about it all and felt really grown up. One night we were at a house party when we decided to leave. It was me, my best friend, and her other friend. This other friend was romantically talking to a really big creator at the time. He was also the best friend of my soon-to-be assaulter. She wanted to go back to his hotel room, but didn't want to go alone, so we went with her. I didn't really mind, as I was up for anything. When we got to the hotel room, it was the creator, the girl was talking to, and his best friend. The two of them and the three of us. Not much happened that first night, just some drinking and talking at a table. The guy's friend had been passing flirts at me the entire night, but because he was the oldest in the room, we assumed he didn't know my age. Later that night, when I left, I received Instagram DMs from him, and in my Instagram bio, in bold, was my age, 18, confirming he knew how old I was. A few days passed when I found myself in the same situation. Us three were at a party when it got boring, and whether the girl wanted to leave and go to his room, or he asked us to, I cannot remember. Once again, I was drunker than the night before and was willing to go anywhere. I was naive, and so we went back. I remember a friend seeing me in the lobby on the way. They were worried by the way I was acting and asked if I was okay. I was really drunk, and it was an eerie feeling, like they could sense something was wrong, and I wondered what would have happened if I had picked up on it, and if I wasn't drunk, and if I didn't wave it off. But I don't want to dwell on the what-ifs. That night, I went up to his room. Back at the hotel room again were the two friends and us three girls. At the time, all of us girls were already really drunk from the party we were coming from, stumbling and everything. There was more alcohol in the room, and we were encouraged to drink some more as they offered the bottles to us. They said they would join us in drinking, and insisted on drinking games, and, already drunk, I obviously complied. We sat on the couch and answered questions about each other, drinking a bunch, and the older guy sat right next to me while playing. I confused my nerves for excitement, as I had never been around such a big creator before. I remember getting drunker and drunker and really tired around this time. It was about 3 a.m. Right before the incident, I had answered a question about my age. We were playing a drinking game and talking about sex, and I admitted to everyone in the room that I was 18 and that I was a virgin at the time. I remember back now to him answering questions during the game about back when he was 19 and when he was in college, noticing how my future was his past, and I wondered how he felt sitting so close to me. It was a little after that, when I had resorted to playing games on my phone when it happened. Out of nowhere, I felt him slip his hand under my clothes, sitting next to me on the couch in front of everyone. He disguised it with a simple, "Are you ticklish?" I coughed out a no, still staring at my phone. I was overly aware of the fact that we were in front of other people, the fact that everyone else was sitting around us, watching us, including my best friend, and that his hand was inching further to places I hadn't asked for it to be. He made a game out of my embarrassment, where he would touch me in certain areas to make me lose the phone game I was playing. I was scared, and I felt sick, either from the alcohol or from his touch. It didn't matter because my mind was a blur. I didn't speak or move. I remember being afraid to even breathe. I stayed there for a while, hoping my stillness could make me disappear. I eventually had to stand up after many minutes for it to stop. I was scared to leave or make a scene out of the embarrassment. Eventually, later in the night, I found myself alone with him and his friend. Everyone else either passed out or sick. I dread the scenarios that could have played out that night, the what ifs. I was just so naive, and lucky or not, the night came to an end with just that. The night lasted until 6 a.m. I was still drunk, either from alcohol or tiredness. I went to leave, and the older guy decided to leave with me. We walked to the elevators, where I didn't get on. He then pretended that the elevator was broken, and that he couldn't leave, telling me to get in the elevator to prove it was broken, and then after a few minutes, he ended the night with a "guess I'm going now," leaving with a wounded puppy look. He proceeded to Instagram message me for a bit after that, simple flirting or asking about the next convention I was going to, saying stuff about seeing me there. Simple messages ultimately filtered into nothing. At the time of it all, I convinced myself I was lucky. I was lucky that that had happened to me. I was excited to be around such big creators, to be at that convention in general. I figured that's just how things were, that was the price I had to pay to be there.
So first and foremost, before we dive into George's response, I just want to say that I really don't care about the age difference. I know some people look at it like, he's 21 and she's 19. Oh my God, he must be a predator. It's crazy. That's kind of like the 2024 feelings anymore. I really don't get it. So he's 26, she's 18. They're both legal. That's what matters to me. They're both of legal consenting age. At that point, you do what you want to do. Some people like older people. Some people like to have a girlfriend that's 19. Some girls like to have a boyfriend that's 19 and they're in their 30s. It is what it is. You don't have to like it, but I'm not really going to focus on that. And that seems to get brought up a lot in this, but again, it doesn't really matter to me. I think what matters the most is that she's a virgin. That to me is a bigger deal than the age difference. Obviously, the age kind of gives to the fact that she's a virgin, right? Usually you're not into your 20s, but I don't think that the age is as important as that fact. So let's get into his response.
The first night that I actually met Katie, I was with Dream in his hotel room, and Dream was in a group chat with 5 other people. These 5 people included Katiebugs, her best friend, and 3 other of her friends. Now, these 5 people, they were at an official VidCon after party, and they wanted Dream to go meet up with them and hang out with them. But Dream actually didn't want to hang out with them, and the reason is because at the time he was wearing his Dream mask a lot, and he felt uncomfortable wearing it because it's a whole mask on your face. So he just didn't want to go to the party particularly. He even suggested that they shouldn't come because he was assuming that they were having more fun where they were. They reassured him that that wasn't the case. They were bored and they wanted him to come. So now these 5 people are trying to come to the hotel, but the problem with that is to get into the hotel, you need to have a VidCon creator badge. And only 2 of the people in the group chat actually had this badge. That was Katie and her best friend. So eventually what happened is Katie and 2 of her other friends came to Dream's hotel room. This was my first time actually meeting them in real life. I didn't even know who they were before meeting them. And then we essentially just were playing drinking games in the hotel room. We were just having fun, talking with each other. Nothing crazy in particular. Now, one thing Katie said retrospectively, looking back at the scenario, is that I was flirting with her throughout the night and that she was uncomfortable with this because of our age difference. The second time that we hung out was the next night after this. And again, the same scenario happens from the night before. They are trying to get him to go out to another party that they were at. And same story, Dream didn't want to go, but was open to them coming here. And again, that is what happened. But this time, their friends were actually all able to get in. I don't know how they did it, but Katie, her best friend, and 3 other of her friends ended up coming to the room, which had me, Dream, and my online friend that I just met. So 8 people total in this room at this point. This night was very similar to the one before. We were just hanging out, playing games, drinking, and just having a good time. So something I actually want to point out before I continue with the rest of the story is the way that she phrases some things in her story. Instead of saying that her and the rest of her friends actually wanted to come to the hotel to hang out with us, she said that one friend was invited by Dream, but she didn't want to go alone. So then they decided to go along with her because they were willing to go anywhere. I just think it's important to note already that the story is slightly different from the reality of it, and I'll be mentioning this a few more times throughout the rest of the story. You can see in these screenshots from the text at the time that they were all trying to come to the hotel, and it wasn't just oh, we're willing to follow her, essentially. They were all in the group chat and part of the discussion to go to the hotel. Another thing that she talks about is how we insisted that she drinks more and that we insisted on playing drinking games when this isn't the case. Again, they had already been drinking at this party before they arrived to the hotel room, and they had also been the ones that were asking to play the drinking games. So instead of us insisting that we play it, they were actually the ones that were asking us. And you can see that in the screenshot here. They had actually texted multiple times, specifically wanting to play this drinking game that we had played the night before.
So at this point, I have to be honest, I started to question her story a little bit because it seemed like she told us some information that he responded to with text messages that kind of showed that it was false, right? Like they wanted us to come over. They like coerced us into drinking, and us being drunk, we said, yeah, we may as well. But in reality, it looks like the girls wanted to drink with them. They wanted to come over and they wanted to play the drinking game. Now, it doesn't show any names in these text messages, so I don't know that she was actively participating in saying any of this stuff in the group. It may have been her friends, but still, the fact remains that they were actually the ones trying to push the game, push the drinking and stuff like that. And I think that that's important because once you start to lie about some of the facts around the things that you say, I have to start to question everything you say, right? Which is why it's better to be truthful, even if some of it doesn't really work in your favor or make the overall thing that you're trying to, say look good. I feel like you need to just say it anyway, because then there's no way of discrediting you. It just looks true, right? So that's the only issue that I had with it so far.
So at this point, we then moved to the couch. There was a couch in the room, and I sit next to Katie. She also says, looking back on the scenario, that she confused her nerves for excitement when I sit next to her. But again, at this moment in time, everything was friendly. Nothing sexual had happened. I'm just literally sitting next to her on the couch. And during this, she was laughing, smiling. She gave no indication that she was uncomfortable with me sitting this close to her, and it was clear to anyone there that she was not uncomfortable with me sitting next to her. Then eventually 2 of the people that came to the hotel room left. So then it was just down to me, Dream, my online friend, Katie, Katie's best friend, and a 6th mutual friend. Next she says, this is a quote, resorted to playing games on her phone to avoid the awkward situation. Now, I just don't see how this is the case. She's implying that she is using her phone to essentially escape and such an awkward scenario that she's in, but that's just not how it happened, and this is why. She brought up the phone game as kind of a point. The game was honestly the central point of the interaction at this part of the night. It was a very social thing, she was passing the phone around, we were all playing the game and bantering about it, just having fun with the game. So I don't see how she resorted to it and was using it in that context. She wasn't being awkward at all. There was no sense of uncomfortability from her. She was laughing and playing with everyone. And yeah, I'm not really sure why she phrased it like this. We actually continued to send each other high score updates even weeks after the event. To add further context to this moment, we were all actually sitting on the couch that was in the hotel room playing this game on her phone. And during this, me and Katie were at the far end of the couch and we were cuddling together. We had been cuddling for, I'd say, around an hour at this point, playing the game, talking, and just having fun. And for clarity, I had my hand around her waist above her clothes. So with her statement where she's saying that she's resorting to playing games on her phone, I just don't really understand it. And I think that the picture that she's painting is really dark, when in reality she seemed very happy with the situation, was having a good time.
She also made comments that he started to flirt with her on IG afterwards. And she didn't say it was one-sided, but the way that she put it made it seem like she wasn't reciprocating it necessarily, just like he was still pushing the issue. Based on some of the messages that he shows, it looks like it was more mutual than I felt in the initial video that she said.
We messaged for a bit after, through Instagram DMs and Snapchat. And the way that we talked to each other was always pretty banterous. For example, after the first night that we hung out, but before the second, she'd actually texted me and said, "You better not be in Dream's room tonight or I'm going to shoot your leg." Obviously, she's not going to shoot my leg. It's just, we're just messing with each other. And I'd actually responded to her and said, "Well, guess what? I'm actually here right now." And yeah, after this, we texted for a bit, sometimes daily, sometimes we would take a few days break, even a few weeks at some point. And at some point after VidCon, we were actually both in London at the same time. And she let me know this through her DMs. Now, I will say she didn't come out outright and say, "I'm in London," but she did say that she had gone to a place that was known to be a London thing. And I commented on that and said, and asked what she was doing in London. And just to clarify, we did not meet up whilst in London, nor make plans to do so. She was always extremely friendly to me. I was friendly to her.
Now, obviously, I can't speak for everybody, but I would think that if you were really uncomfortable with a situation, you wouldn't continue to message back and forth with this person, especially in a flirty way, which even she showed in some of the messages she shows on Twitter. And so that kind of was weird to me. I didn't really understand that. But at the same time, I can understand that he is a bigger creator, right? And sometimes people feel like, well, if I just blow them off, maybe I'll get blacklisted from, the group that they're a part of or from different people and stuff like that. And I really want to grow as a creator as well. So that side of it, I can understand. I don't know if there's any proof that George has ever done that in the past. So without precedent, it doesn't make much sense to think that way, but it's possible. It's possible that's what it was, but it's also possible that she kind of felt, okay, this is cool, everything is good. And then maybe in hindsight started to feel a little bit worse about the situation, which it seems like that's mostly what it was. Like in the moment, maybe it was cool, but then looking back, she kind of feels like it wasn't as cool as, she initially thought, and obviously being drunk. And so we'll get to all that as we go on.
So then this is when her most important claim happens. I'm just going to read the quote. She says, "Out of nowhere, I felt him slip his hand under my clothes, sitting next to me on the couch in front of everyone. He disguised it with a simple, 'Are you ticklish?' I coughed out a no, and still staring at my phone, I was overly aware of the fact that we were in front of other people. The fact that everyone else was sitting around us, watching us, including my best friend, and that his hand was inching further to places I hadn't asked it to be. Again, as I mentioned before, we had previously been cuddling on this couch for around an hour, but I did place my hand on her waist under her shirt. The way it's phrased makes it sound like it just happened out of nowhere, when in reality we had been cuddling for over an hour at this point, and it was not out of nowhere. It was also around half an hour until I started moving my hand further up, and the way it's phrased just makes it seem like it happened pretty instantly and pretty quickly. There was nothing quick about it, it was very slow, and I was very cautious about it and making sure that she was comfortable throughout the process. Me and Katie were very touchy, very cuddly, and very slowly got more intimate.
So when it comes to the main accusation, obviously it becomes more of a he said, she said thing. I mean, obviously, if she felt a certain type of way about it, that's valid. You can't really take that from her because it's her experience, and nobody else can really say that her experience isn't what it is because we're not her, right? But at the same time, you also can't say that George was forcing something because I don't know. I don't know what her body language was like. I don't know what the situation was like. And as far as the whole the consent thing, I don't really get it. Like, I get that people are like, I didn't verbally say yes, right? And I'm not trying to say that you should just go and take advantage of anybody that you want to, but for everybody watching this video, do you really ask every single step of the way? Like, hey, can I put my arm around you? Hey, can I kiss you? Hey, can I put my hand on your thigh? Hey, can I do this? Can I, I feel like that's not really a thing. And if it is, maybe it's new and I'm just not aware of this. But all my life, I've never asked any of that. Maybe once or twice when I was really young. And the funny thing is, in those situations, the girl actually said, you don't have to ask me or just kiss me. Like that was it, right? So in my mind, I'm like, it's more body language. If I'm cuddling with you, if I'm close to you and we're vibing and things are going well, I'll put my arm around you, and if you seem to respond well, maybe in a little while, I might try to kiss you. And again, if you say no, or if it seems like you're pulling away or something, then I know, okay, this is not what she wants. I'm going to stop right here. And, that's my bad. I was reading the situation wrong. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. This whole hey, can I do this? Can I do that? It makes it feel transactional to me. I feel like I paid for something and I'm just trying to see what I can do and what I can't do. Now, all that aside, I do have to say that I think the biggest difference is she's a virgin, right? So she's not really had any of these sexual encounters. So for her, it's a little bit different. I do think that you approach that differently. I think that there should be more discussion, more verbal cues, and more things like that than just, hey, I think that she wants this. And this is a problem with being drunk. You should not have been in a situation like this while you're drunk, because first of all, that does dull your ability to read somebody's body language. You might actually think that they're engaging and that they're with it, but they're not. That's kind of the problem that I think happened, and I feel like George made a bit of a mistake. I think that the best way to put this is, like, it's not really about proving somebody right and someone wrong, right? Like, her experience is her experience. You can't really prove that right or wrong because it's hers to have. The same as George's experience and what he thought was going on. You can't really prove it wrong if he's being genuine and saying, this is actually what I thought, and I felt that this is the way things were going and we were on the same page. So it gets a little bit messy, but she does add some nuance to the situation, and I think it's important. So let's get into those. For now, this is what I have to say. He admitted to touching me, that I was drunk, that I verbally didn't consent. In my mind, the conversation is over. He said silence does not equal consent yet. 1, never got verbal confirmation from me. 2, chose to move to a sexual act on the couch where everyone was hanging out without asking. I don't know how those two facts coexist. How can I consent when there was no question? How can I consent when drunk? I prepared proof on the idea he wouldn't admit to it, that he would deny touching me or being there, but he admitted it, that I was drunk and he touched me in front of everyone, that I never said yes, nor did he ask, and I'm still asked for a response, proof, explanations. Frankly, I think it's effing insane. If you still need more after hearing him admit those two simple facts, then nothing I can say is going to change your mind. Now, I'm not going to continue to harp on my thought about consent. I do think in her situation, she's not wrong. Because again, if somebody's never had a sexual experience, they don't understand sexual cues, they're a virgin, I think that there should be more discussion. I think that you should take it way more cautiously. You should be asking questions. You should make sure that that person is completely comfortable. And obviously he didn't do that. Now, whether or not he knew that she was a virgin and she was 18, I can't really say. Now, she claims that she said it during the game, so I would assume if he's next to her that he had to have heard it. But at the same time, I don't know the situation. I don't know if they were playing while people got up and went to the bathroom, went to get more to drink. So there is a chance he wasn't in the room, but I would lean towards him having heard it and probably knowing. Now, as far as her not being able to consent because she was drunk, I do understand that there is technically a law that says that you're not really able to consent if you're on drugs, if you're drunk, like, if you're not sober. But if both people are drunk, I feel like you kind of got to let that one go a little bit. Now, she is 18. She shouldn't be drinking. That is a whole nother story. But as far as two people being drunk, this happens all the time. I'm sorry, but if you go to a bar, you cannot tell me that you've never went home and had slept with anybody. So in all reality, we'd be calling everybody, the rapist. Now, in another portion of her messages, she says, a lot of the cuddling he may have felt was personal, but was just me being drunk. Everyone on the couch was doing the same thing, all drunk, close together, but I get it. I was drunk. I didn't think cuddling automatically meant it was to turn sexual. I didn't know it was an invitation. I wasn't going to push him off in front of everyone. He took a step further in front of everyone, all because he assumed things and assumed he had the right. As a shy person, I could not speak up in front of him and everyone else, let alone say yes. Even if you wanted to take a step forward sexually, why do it in the open? If you're cautious about consent, why not ask? That's usually the first step. And more importantly, why does everything have to get taken a step further? And may I reiterate that I was drunk. Now, the only problem that I had with this is in her initial video, she didn't make it seem like they were cuddling. She made it seem like there was distance. Like she was really not about this at all. She was stiff still. She was trying to get herself out of the situation. And then she goes on to admit that she actually was cuddling with him. So I'm just like, you should have just said this in the beginning. But regardless, it doesn't automatically mean that you get to make advances on somebody. This is where like sexual cues come into play. With her being a virgin, she may not really understand that. Whereas he may be like, listen, every girl I've cuddled with, it's moved to the next level and it's been completely fine. And I don't disagree with her about the whole, why do this in public? Because I'm not a public person. I'm not about to squeeze a cheek and, grab a titty out in public. But apparently my man felt a little bit differently. And, being drunk obviously leads you down that path. And again, this is why you don't put yourself in situations like this with people when you're drunk, especially people that are not really experienced in this situation. She did address the whole why she stayed when her friends left. And without reading it, I'm just going to summarize. She basically says, I didn't know that they left. Like they were drunk. She was throwing up in her hand. And, and George claims that she said goodbye. So again, he said, she said, until other people chime in, I really don't know what actually happened, right? Now, if she was uncomfortable and her friend left and she said goodbye, I feel like she should have just went with her, got her out of the situation. But if she didn't know, then that's why she stayed, right? So I don't really know. So I can't really say much on that. And then she goes into the whole, he assumed because of your body language. Now, based on what she says here, it kind of seems like she feels because they just met that he can't assume to know how she feels. And I don't know that that's true. There's a lot of people that I just met, didn't know a whole lot about, but it turned sexual because we started cuddling and body language said one thing to another. I made a move or they made a move. It was reciprocated. And then things kind of rolled from there. Like, that's very possible. You don't have to know someone in and out to be like, oh, I get your body language now. Like, it's just, you're either with it or you're not, right? Now, I do think that the biggest problem is being drunk. I think when you're drunk, you might assume that someone's body language is telling you that it's all good because you want that so much, you're not paying attention to the actual cues. She may have been a little stiff. She may have been giving a nervous laugh, like she says, and he may not have been aware of that because he was drunk. And I'm not saying that that's an excuse. I'm just saying that that's potentially a reason. I don't really need more messages because it's clear what happened, right? And I'm just going to kind of recap everything and talk about where I stand and what I feel about what actually went down. So all in all, because I'm just chatting at this point, George made a bad decision. He didn't intend to make a bad decision, but he made a bad decision. He was drunk. He let his feelings and his, want for a little bit more get the best of him. And he did some things that she wasn't necessarily receiving as well as he thought that she was. And her being inexperienced, she didn't really know how to respond to it. She didn't feel comfortable saying no. She just felt like, it's going to be over soon. And, I understand people saying that she should have spoke up. I do feel like she should have, but it's not something that everybody in the moment is going to understand or feel like. And again, not having been in that situation before is very new to her. So I'm not going to blame her. I'm not really going to blame him, but I am going to say that, it was a bad move on his part. Right. And I think that it's just something where hopefully everybody can move on. I just think that this was bad all around. And I think that everybody kind of made some mistakes in the situation, and that's it. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys thought. Just wanted to talk about that. I'll catch you in the next one, homies.